good evening and a warm welcome to everybody who's present with us this evening. And it is going to be an invigorating conversation I'm going to have with the person who I have the privilege of introducing. I'm going to play a short video on Indian Women Network just to encourage all the women that are watching us as to why they should be a part of a networked organization. So I request the video to come on, please. Thank you very much. Engage, learn, and be inspired today. That's what we are heading for. Do no harm and make no errors is what doctors learn. But if you look at leadership in healthcare and leadership, you will find that we need to understand, is it different and why is it so? How did you look at the changing 4 decades of healthcare and how the scenarios have changed as we go along? From a cataract surgery that immobilized you for 7 days to where you walk out of the surgery and go home in half an hour. You actually had a transverse lie of an abdomen before you needed to understand what was happening inside that abdomen. And today, of course, you have minimally invasive surgery and robotic surgery and even no scar surgery that we will talk about. And if you look at it, those changing times is something that we are embodied by the person who is going to sit and talk to us. To this audience, I introduce a legend in healthcare. Director of a prestigious multi-specialty, I can't but read this, so please excuse me. Director of a prestigious multi-specialty, multi-armed specialty institute. Chief of Surgical Gastroenterology, minimally invasive and transplant services. The only Indian organization certified by the Global World Endoscopy Organization. Teacher, trainer, mentor to surgeons and administrators. Faculty, board, task force member to nationally and internationally delivered organizations, and he has 21 named orations that he delivered. Past and current chair to so many academic bodies, awards notably Outstanding Young Persons Award by the JSCs International, Government of India Parliament Gold Medal in the field of gastroenterology, prestigious Dr. B.C. Rai Award in 2009, the Economic Times Inspiring Doctors of India in 2018, acknowledging him as an architect of Healthy India, Jury Pride of Telangana Awards. It didn't stop there. He's an honorary fellow at 3 nations, the Venezuelan, the Philippine and the Egyptian surgical societies. And amongst many firsts, His able hands can boast of 14,000 plus complex surgeries in the GI space, 13,000 endoscopic procedures too. Many innovative surgical techniques, notably NOTES, the no scar surgery technique, and the first transoral endoscopic appendectomy. It is indeed an honor to introduce Kuduru Venkat Rao, Dr. G.V. Rao, and GV to his friends. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you so much. At the outset, let me thank the CII and the IWN for the honor bestowed. The entire executive who is sitting behind the scenes actually and watching this, I was surprised actually when an invitation came from the CII asking me to be part of this. Slightly confused as to why I am sitting next to a person whom I have known for more than a decade or so, but till you read out her credentials, I am extremely sorry that I feel humble sitting beside you, because all I know her was when she used to accompany innumerable number of patients from across the country and outside and sit patiently in the outpatient. I'm extremely sorry for whatever I have done so far. I feel humbled that I'm sharing this screen with a person of your caliber. Thank you so much, and congratulations to the amount of work that you're doing, service that you're providing to the women in general. I'm not a leader to talk about it, but I think I'll just talk as a doctor in this meeting. Actually, it is mostly an interaction to tell you what is happening from my side. And I'll certainly not say that I am a leader in this field or any of those things. Okay, please.
Okay, so the first question comes to you. We say the leader is a stimulus and he's also a response. Okay, so the foundation of your journey began very humbly, and you started out as a doctor and you made your way through to being who you are today. Would you share how that change came about from being a doctor to a director and being an administrator?
Yeah, this is a very interesting story actually. See, after I passed of my master's from Bangalore, then I went to Chennai to do some super specialization in surgical gastroenterology. Then had a short stint in UK, getting trained in minimally invasive surgery and hepatobiliary surgery. Came back to Hyderabad sometime in 87, 89, 90s, I think. Totally was finding myself like fish out of water. No godfathers, and when you get into a practice like this, what happens was by that time there are a lot of seniors who are already established very well in clinical practice, and it was very difficult to break those barriers to get to do something, especially in the private sector. So I tried for some time. Then what happened was actually we are not able to do anything in the private sector because obviously we didn't have any. So I got into government service. My father was very happy that I joined the government service because he served in the government. I went and joined in a primary health center. After all this stint across many centers in the country, actually I was totally frustrated in that primary health center after 2 days, and I came back and I resigned. My father was very upset with me that I resigned a government job, and he didn't talk to me for the next 6 months or so. That was, then after I came back, actually I was looking out for some place. I had approached a couple of hospitals, but nobody was those days willing to take anybody raw into their hospitals. And that was where I bumped into this legend, Dr. Nageshwar Reddy. I mean, it's not that I know him personally, but I just went one day to his clinic and asked him, because I have ample time to spare, whether I could just come and watch some endoscopy procedures that he was doing. Those days he used to spend time in Medinova, and then he used to go to the Nizam's Institute of Medical Sciences. So he gladly accepted actually, and that's where the journey started. Then subsequently I joined BB Cancer Hospital as a full-time consultant. So I used to spend my early morning hours in endoscopy with Dr. Reddy, and then subsequently go to BB Cancer Hospital to do some surgical work. Again come back to watch some endoscopy procedures. Slowly over the period of time, I mean, thanks to Dr. Reddy, I mean, the whole journey started, and I think it clicked. A physician-surgeon combination seemed to have clicked actually. And we were able to get along and then do many things which other people were not able to do. Basically because they didn't have that good rapport between a physician and a surgeon. So that's where it started. From there we moved on to 2004. We decided we should stop private practice, and we thought we'll set up an institution. It was a big decision on our part and on part of our families also. So Dr. Reddy asked me very clearly, are you sure you are going to get into this, wherein you're going to stop whatever private practice that you have had actually and get into this sort of an academic thing? He was my mentor, and I absolutely said, actually, whatever you decide, it's okay with me. And 2004 we started the Asian Institute of Gastroenterology. Initially we thought not many people would join, but a lot of like-minded people joined, and we started the journey wherein we thought we could deliver these services at a price which nobody can imagine, and at the same time delivering the highest quality of the high-tech technology that is available in the world that time. And we are able to get access basically because we have been very closely associated with a lot of faculty both in and out of the country. So 2004 we started. Then, I mean, a lot of you would have had some experience at the Subhajiguda Hospital. It has become so crowded that we were not able to manage. But the other thing that we realized was actually, though we were developing on the GI side, the ancillary support that we supposed to get from the other specialty was minimal, very minimal. And we, by the time we have realized that actually, if we continue like this, we will not be able to do anything more unless and until we have the other specialties coming in a big way to take this to a next level of healthcare. That is where we moved into the AAG hospitals. Again, it's a big gamble that we played. We never imagined that it would come to such massive structure. Initially, when we started, actually, the government of Andhra Pradesh gave us this piece of land. And subsequently, when we initially drew the plans, it was a very modest building. But the goodwill that has generated over the 3 decades of practice that you have had seemed to have helped us for the first time. And a lot of philanthropists came in and donated in such a magnanimous way that this entire building that we have and the infrastructure and the care that we have, it goes to all those people who have supported us building up this massive structure. And subsequently we are able to get a lot of other specialities. And by this time people have realized that this sort of a group practice is the one which is going to make a lot of difference in clinical practice, basically because individual practice is not going to be of any benefit to the patient or not for yourself, and that this group practice seems to have become the in thing of the day. And over the last 3 decades we have seen a lot of centers change into this sort of a practice.
So you did feel like the load less traveled when you set out on this path, because there were not many that you could emulate. And if you want to talk about how infrastructure matches expertise and how you went about that, because today you have probably the most envious and enviable infrastructure that anybody in healthcare for this country can even think of. So do you want to tell us a little about that journey where the countless planning happened, the administrative took place, and how you actually made that difference happen and that road less traveled got traversed?
It looks very, for people outside, it looks very simple that actually overnight, people who are not seen, people would think actually it is a massive structure that has come up in a short period of time. But actually I should thank a lot of people who are behind the scene, actually who have spent umpteen number of hours designing, executing the entire the masterpiece that we have had, which has got a lot of the first things and lot of high-tech things into the thing, and it was not that easy to get all of them integrated into our system, which was totally not used to it. So actually, in fact, to get this structure, we had almost about 3,600 plus minuted meetings, and all these meetings happened between 12 and 3 in the morning, past midnight and 3 o'clock actually. So we used to feel bad that all these people, the engineers, all these people had to come that time. But I should thank all those people who cooperated with us, because we could not stop our clinical practice and get to this. And at the same time, we could not leave this entire thing to somebody else to design the thing, because we've designed this based on the requirements of our population. How the patient flow, what the patients like, what the patient don't like. So every single thing that has been here has been taken to the highest, what you can call it as detailed discussions before we translated that into a reality. So a lot of people helped us actually, and then the industry came in a big way once it started actually. We have 3 big firms actually, Olympus, Philips and Draeger, which came in a big way to support this. And so what, I mean, even when I was sitting with the drawings actually, I never realized that it could be such a beautiful building with such a high-tech thing that we could get. But actually, as the thing progresses, even after it started actually, the way it is started actually, I mean, and the way people are supporting it is something phenomenal actually, be it be corporate social responsibility or the industry that is supporting us. I mean, I think I should say that actually we are lucky that we are blessed that so many people are supporting us to take this venture to the people.
So you're a mentor, you're a teacher, you're a motivator, and a lot of people, whether you like it or not, look up to you. So how do you take people along on a journey like this? Because you can have two, you can have the Nageshwar Reddy and you can have the G.V. Rao, but there have to be others that bring together the life to such an organization. So what would you want to say about that?
During my post-graduation, even during my undergraduation, I used to like teaching actually. Teaching was my passion. So I used to conduct a lot of classes to the youngsters, my juniors. But when after all this training, I came back to Hyderabad, suddenly I thought we would lose this entire touch with the teaching part. We'll never be able to get back to the teaching part. But surprisingly, after we moved to this, actually we were able to get the national board, and we are very happy to see that actually the NEET exam that happens, the first 10 rankers, both in the medical surgical specialty, opt for AIG. That's the biggest thing that we have actually. Every year the same thing happens, that the top 10 to 12 rankers opt for AIG, both on the medical and the surgical side. Now the biggest advantage that has happened was actually, so we got back to the teaching, and now we are interacting with our specialities, and obviously we are getting the cream of the students who are passing out the thing actually, to an extent that I see some of these students who could have got their DM or MCH are opting for the national board degree from AIG. That is something very touching. And in fact, actually, the National Board has instituted the gold medal for surgical gastroenterology. Of the 8 medals that came in, 4 came to AIG actually. So that's
Wow.
so I'm very happy that we're able to train a lot of people. But the biggest thing that we had in mind was we thought all those people would get trained, would stay back with us and continue this journey. But actually we were mistaken. It is not a mistake, but I think it's a natural process that actually everybody has got their own obligations, family obligations, the financial obligations, and too many things actually, you understand actually, which we never imagined, which have led a lot of people to move away from the institute. But we are very happy that they moved away from us, because they are spreading this to the rest of the world. Initially we were slightly more possessive about these people, but now I think we should let these people go from our institute so that they share this thing with others. At the same time, now we have started drawing faculty from the other places. So it is not that we are only teaching them, we turn to learn a lot of things from the other people who are joining us. And we started this grand rounds in the hospital, which has become a big hit actually, wherein all the specialties come together to discuss cases from their own individual department, which is really an eye-opener for us. And it is making faculty interact with each other. And I think it's going to really change the way we practice at AIG hospitals.
Very interesting, because it's like you're letting your own children grow up and go away and bringing in new cross learnings across borders to understand and infuse a new set of learnings that is going to happen, to have that cross pollination, as you would call it.
Yeah, absolutely, you're very right. Actually, it should never be that only the students who are trained here should stay back here. We should have that cross culture coming in from different parts of the world. And in fact, actually, not only this, actually, the biggest thing that has happened was actually because of the amount of work, quality of work that is done here. We get students from across the globe right now who come here and get trained in all the medical and surgical specialties here. And they are the big brand ambassadors for us who have been talking about AIG across the globe.
So, are leaders born or are leaders made? It's a thought process, but if you look at it, there is a certain amount of leadership that goes into anything that you talk about when you talk about leaders being born or leaders being made. So what in your thought process would be leaders being born or leaders being made?
This is a very good question actually, leaders being born, leaders being made. I'm not sure about this. I don't think I am a leader, first of all. But I definitely...
Well, the industry acknowledges you as such, so you might as well accept it.
I would like to make some leaders actually.
Sure.
I would like to create leaders actually. As a part of this actually, we have identified people in the next generation and we are training them, we are sending them, we are involving them in their various activities. They don't know that we are doing this, but we are entrusting them with responsibilities to see how they come out of those things, giving them some work which is in addition to the clinical work which they are supposed to do. And we have already identified some people who are very good at this, and I am sure that they'll carry on the legacy of the AIG hospitals. Now it's come to a time the medical practice is completely changed from a more broader specialty to more subspecialties now. So now I am grooming my younger leaders for more subspecialties. I'm a more general surgical gastroenterologist and an endoscopist, but I'm grooming my leaders for subspecialties, a colorectal surgeon or a hepatobiliary surgeon or a foregut surgeon. That is my aim. Actually, we are quite successful in that. We have identified people and I'm sure you're seeing all these people on the screens all over.
Yes, I do.
Yeah,
yes,
and
I
I'm
do
sure
watch.
you'll be seeing more and more of these people. The biggest thing that all I can do is actually, I'll take all the negatives from my side and I'll share that burden, but we still try to push them, make sure that they are not burdened with what we have gone through. It's very easy to say what we have gone through, but the next generation is not at all interested in what we have gone through, and that is not what we are interested in telling them also. So they have to know they are in a completely a new generation, which is completely different from the generation almost 2 to 3 decades back, and their difficulties and their this thing are totally different from what we have had. But the biggest thing is actually they have access to everything which we never had, and I'm sure, but we'll see big change in medical practice very soon.
Very interesting. If you had to say that, I heard you say that I would take away everything negative and let them grow. And that's one of your styles of leadership, so that you are making sure that people understand that there is a past, but that is not something that they need to carry forward. So they are being given a fresh slate as you look at it to take forward that conversation. But having said that, is there a dominant style of leadership that you would talk about? Is there something that you pass on to people knowingly, unknowingly, that you take forward along with them?
I'm not very sure about this. Actually, I think this, maybe if you ask my juniors, maybe they'll tell me whether I am a person or not. But usually we try to be, see, what happens is actually they're in a precarious stage right now, which need to be balanced actually. And I feel the burnout for the younger generation is very short as compared to what we have had. So within that short period of time, they should be given that ample platform and a very good platform for themselves to project. And obviously the younger generation is too good to practice. And I strongly believe that actually whatever we have to share with our juniors actually. And like I heard somebody saying actually, if I have to go to the graveyard tomorrow, I should go empty-headed. I should not carry any of these things to the graveyard. Everything should be emptied, both mentally, physically, financially. I don't think we should anything should take anything to the graveyard. That I think I strongly believe, and I think I'll implement this.
So let me rephrase that question a little bit, and I love the fact that you want to go empty-headed. I have never heard this before. Empty-headed is the hardest thing for any of us to do. But do you delegate, or do you manage, or you collaborate, or what is it that you love doing alongside people when you are doing your administrative functions alongside your...
See, this is a very interesting thing, Dr. Uma. What happens is actually for every person, in addition to the medical thing that he has got, especially in my field, they have an interest in something else beyond medicine.
Yes.
This needs to be identified, and we have to make sure that that person at least spends some time in that part of the field that he is interested in. That will make him more productive rather than trying to push him in only to the medical or the surgical specialty. See, we have over the period of time identified people. Actually, there are some people who are interested in computers and robotics. We have involved with the Indian Institute of Science and the IITs to make robotics for us. We have had some people who are interested in some industrial work, actually making some new gadgets. So we have got collaborated with the IIT Kanpur to make this. So we have identified the talent of these people in addition to what they have, and we push them in those directions. There are some people who are interested in rural health. There are some people who are interested in epidemiology. So we identified those people, and then we are trying to push them in that direction, so they are happy doing that work. And the biggest thing that has happened was actually, for the first ever time, actually, we on the private sector started the basic research. So whatever money that we made on the clinical side, we pumped in onto the research side. People thought we were mad. People thought you're mad, you're not going to do anything, you're unnecessarily spending your money. And 15-20 years down the lane, actually we have one of the best basic sciences lab in the country. We have almost about 15 PhDs who are working full time with us. And over the period of time, AIG has come to a stage where we started awarding PhDs, started taking PhD students and started awarding PhD degrees. The biggest thing that happened for us with the basic science was we were concentrating on translational research, in the sense like most of the scientists are doing real basic work. We are doing the basic work, but in addition we are doing a translational work which can be immediately translated to clinical work. That is the biggest advantage that we have. And the classical example I will give you, actually we had this islet cell transplantation,
Yes.
which we translated very immediately, basically because of this facility. So this is what is making a lot of PhDs now to come and join AIG, because the scientists are recognized for the basic work, but the recognition is not that much as what happens in translational medicine. So
Sure.
here it is translating very fast. So we have a lot of scientists who are joining us to take this, and 20% of our time we work with the basic scientists.
That is very interesting, because I'm so looking forward to that islet cell coming forward a larger way, because I'm sure that's the next Nobel Prize for one of you guys.
Yeah, we already started the autologous thing actually. The allogenic thing actually I think we'll start it very soon.
Yeah.
But the other things that are coming up, actually we have a lot of stuff that has come into the thing, which we were partnered with the Indian Institute of Science, Indian Institute of Technology, IIT Kanpur, IIT Hyderabad. In fact, now the IIT Hyderabad students are posted to the hospital to
Okay.
watch what we are doing actually. See, it is surprising that actually about 6-7 years back, we had one young IIT girl who came into the theater to watch the procedures. And you know what happens, you take a scalpel and you make an incision.
Yeah.
She told me, this is very barbaric, doctor, I think you should have something new. So, you understand what I'm saying? Their way of looking at it actually is not, they have some ideas as to how we can change making an incision from a scalpel to something else. So, see, that sort of an interaction really helps actually. So, we have those students coming in, really teasing us to the core and telling us this is not what you're supposed to do, but it is real learning experience actually.
So what I hear very strongly is that change is constant, and what you do here is not just like transformational basic science, but transformational administration, transformational medical practices, transformational in more ways than one.
Yeah, unless and until you're open to change actually, otherwise you'll literally burn out. I mean, 5-10 years of the practice, I think you're out of clinical practice. You have to have some innovative thing that is going on, something innovative thing that is going on, or you have to be involved in some this thing. Actually, in fact, we have a department of innovations here, wherein anybody who wants to make any gadget or something of that sort, they go sit in that department to make that gadget here. So that is what helps actually, that is what keeps these people going, and that's what keeps faculty staying with us.
Yeah.
You understand? Our salary structure could be, I mean, any of the faculties working here could be making 10 times more if they go outside and work, but they're staying back with us basically because of the satisfaction they get out of recognition they get both nationally and internationally, and they're able to do things which other people are not able to do. It is something like I could do about 1,000 Whipples. I'm doing the same thing over and over and over again, but I have to do something more than that actually to make a mark. Otherwise, I'm just one among the crowd.
I'm going to ask you a very simple question, and yet it's going to sound difficult for you. If you have a bad day, what can be a really bad day, and how do you handle that?
This is actually, bad days are
Don't tell
quite
me,
often.
Don't tell me there's
Quite
so
often.
many.
There are many. It is not bad days, it is bad hours actually. We don't call them bad days, actually it is bad hours. So, because when you're dealing with so many patients, so many people, both on clinical side and administrative side. Actually, we have lot of things that come in. It's a different ball game if you're totally shying away from these things and you're saying that you're not responsible for this, you handle your thing by yourself. But we at AIG try to be part of these things and take those things on to us. So I don't call them bad days, but I enjoy those things actually. So it all depends on how you take it actually.
The challenge.
Yeah, it's a challenge and you enjoy taking up that challenge actually. You are in a period of slight this thing actually, but I think you should never show that actually. I think maybe just take off for about 10-15 minutes, have a cup of tea and then get back to this thing actually. And the biggest thing that happens to us is because of so much of clinical load, we don't usually brood over the bad thing that happens over the period of time. That's what happens actually. That's the biggest advantage that I have. Otherwise, suppose I have had a lot of free time sitting and then maybe I would be brooding over the same thing over and over again.
So two big messages there, that is, one, take off, think it through, come back, work on it. And the other one is that don't have time enough on your hands to let it sink in. Work on it and don't brood on it. Don't
Absolutely.
let it get to you, right?
Absolutely.
So I'm going to shift this conversation a little bit towards the environment in healthcare today and how the politics and the culture that identify with policies are changing. And it's a complex word because healthcare is full of technology today. It's driven by patient care and patient centricity. Diagnostics has its own place. Basic science is there. So and of course at the center of it all is life. It's not like a manufacturing effort that I have where I can say, I'm going to walk away from this today, think about it, come back tomorrow and work on it. No, it's a 10-minute decision, sometimes a split-second decision that makes that change. So healthcare has a large number of women that have worked into it because caring comes very easily to women and they find it an easier environment to work in. How would you say if there are any identified policies or something that has helped AIG have such a large set of women at workforce?
Very interesting question actually. We have almost about 40%, 40-45% of.
So my homework is right.
Yeah, 40-45% of the staff is women. Absolutely right. Actually, they're able to do things at a much softer pace, and they're able to deliver the things which we are not able to do. But I think both the things have their own pros and cons. I really admire them for what they've been doing. But just on the lighter note, actually, so far this is the only time that you're talking to me like this, but I've been on n number of debates wherein they used to put me on the other side and ask me to talk, including I had a debate with Nandita Das some time back on this.
I saw that.
Fully well understand actually the amount of contribution that the women make to the society. The pandemic has shown me a different version of this entire thing. Actually, all those people who never realized the power of women, I think, have realized the power of women during the pandemic. One of the best things that has happened is to show how the women folk have taken care of the family and the profession, distributing their time and space very well, and at the same time they have not shown all that negative things on the patient care. So that is the biggest thing that we learned, because we have been interacting with these faculties right through this pandemic, and though they are very calm, we know how much of turbulence they are going through and how much of sacrifice they are doing, but has been an immense learning for us. All these 20-30 years we've been practicing. Actually, see, like any person who is spending about 16 to 18 hours or 20 hours in the hospital, you literally don't have much time to think about what the other person does. But I think the pandemic has changed actually. It happens actually, it's called the law of averages actually. It is said that any person actually during their lifetime have to and will go through this, and they'll understand every part of and every bit of life. And I think pandemic has changed a lot of us actually. We have understood people very well, and I think we have dealing with people in a different way now actually. I'm not sure whether you agree with me or not actually. The way people are communicating, the way people are talking to each other, the amount of time they're spending with the families, spouses, friends has completely changed after the pandemic. And it is not just the time, but it is the warmth that is being shared that is very important. That is very, very obvious right now post-pandemic.
But is there any policy that AIG has that actually favors or helps women to be more a part of their workforce? Do they make any extra effort to do that?
In fact, actually, just yesterday we had taken a decision that we are going to have a separate, after this, the teaser that came from the IWN.
Right.
Now we have decided to form our own group, the AIG Women Group. And
so do I get to be a part of it?
Yes. And we thought that group will have a platform to put forward their views. Now it is a small portion of them coming onto the front to share their views, but a platform like this I think will have a bigger opportunity for them to share their views and then pass it on to the hospital administrators to take on the positive things. So very soon I think you will see the announcement of the women's wing of AIG. We're just trying to figure out what name we have to give, but I think it's going to be...
Please ask Ivan to support you, and in any case whatever we can do from being an additional member, we would like to support you with all the work that we already do on that.
And we want our people to interact, groups like yours, so that they're exposed to a bigger world and know what is happening in the outside world. And that could really change the way we are administering the hospital today.
Thank you so much. That's a big privilege to us. I'm going to make only 2 more questions happen before we open it up for anybody who wants to ask you anything. And for me, people are led and resources are managed. And how would you take that? How would you feel? I feel people need leading and people like to be led, and resources are always managed, because whether it's time, money, whatever else, we like to manage those resources. But people like to be thought of as being, taken care of, being a part of, being alongside, being in control of. So my response to that is, what would you look at it as? How would you look at it?
Very right actually what you said actually. As I have told you earlier, we have identified people actually and we have made them part and parcel of the institution. Both the decision making and also implementation of the thing actually. It's a big thing actually, but they are made part and parcel of the entire institution. The resources, yes, actually we are able to get our basically the funds that we generate from the clinical work, funds which we generate from the research, funds that we generate from the trials that we do or the work that we do, and we have a lot of these funds coming in from the Government of India, be it the DBT, the CSIR, any of these things. Actually we get huge funding from these organizations to carry on this work. And we have 2 big things that have come into the thing, which the Wellcome Trust is a big thing actually. We have a fellow who does this actually, who has got a huge grant twice to do extensive work on pancreas, and we have some real breakthrough papers that have come in from that actually. So these things are, the other one was another big one from US that is coming in, that is helping us to check the rural India. As a part of this, actually, we have already done part of our work, doing some surveys in the rural work some time back, covered AP, Telangana, but now we are extending this to beyond that, actually taking our services to the doorstep of the people, and we have people who are willing to take this. So as I told you, actually we have brought in people of different cultures, different aptitudes, different zeals, and different targets they have. See, not everybody wants to just do surgery, not everybody wants to do just endoscopy. They want to do something beyond that also. So now actually if you see the AIG portfolio also, actually
Yes.
you see people talking about, at least 10% of the time they're talking about something beyond medicine or surgery. So
Yes.
that is the thing that we started pushing in, so that people get involved into the thing actually. And we have a lot of interactive sessions that happen between people within the hospitals actually. We have created the bicycle club. I mean, these clubs are created basically for people to interact. Otherwise what happens is, I may not see the cardiologist for 1 month actually. I mean, he would be seeing my patient, I would be seeing his
Glad
patient.
that you don't see him.
So what happens is, these are the things that make us bond together and then go a long way actually.
Yeah, I can see the kind of posts that I'm usually a part of, which is very interesting and very broad-based and broad spectrum, the way they actually span so many areas and so many interests. This is going to be my last question to you, and that is a very cliched question, but the perspective of the person makes this question very interesting. And I have seen what AIG was capable of doing during the pandemic, and how quickly there were so many things that were put in place, how guidelines were circulated across the country, how quickly, there were protocols that were put together so that people at a very, very, very affordable cost got care. When the country was going up in flames saying there was no oxygen, there's no this, there's no that, there's no that, there were ways that AIG supported people and managed people. And we have realized with the pandemic today that it's just not the health systems that's going to change. It's the way health is consumed by the consumer also is going to change.
Absolutely.
So how do you see this next 5-10 years of very interesting times in healthcare? The last 35 years have been something very different, and the next 15 years are going to be very different. So
yeah, pandemic has taught us a lot of things, both on the clinical side and the administrative side actually. We had seen, like everybody actually, nobody knew about this disease actually. Everybody was learning by the sheer experiences actually, and the amount of wisdom they were able to put into. There were no guidelines from anywhere actually. So it is basically the practices, and based on the clinical condition they were being treated. But we soon realized that this is not going to work how it is actually. So we have to pull people together to get a common protocol to treat, see how people are improving, and we see that if this set of people are improving, that could be the standard of line of management. So we brought in the intensivists, the internal medicine people, the cardiologists, pulmonologists, gastroenterologists, neurophysicians, everybody onto one platform. Made sure that they are discussing these cases every day, and we told them that they are not going to be any individual based practice. It is going to be an AIG protocol based management that is going to be delivered to the patient. Basically, it is not that I want to give this and I will give this. No, it has to be an evidence based, and it has to be shown to be effective. So that is how people came in, and we started running these webinars and then got these people together, and we have interacted with a lot of people across the globe to share their experiences. And a conglomeration of all this what resulted in the first ever protocols that we brought out from AAJ Hospital. And the protocols made lot of difference in the patient management. The protocols made sure that we are not wasting too much of manpower. Protocols made sure that we are not wasting too much of money. Protocols made sure that we are not wasting too much of hospital resources, and protocols made sure that we are able to discharge this patient at an early rate. All this translated very effectively, and we have had an audit from all the departments after this, and we still going on to doing that actually. And surprisingly, we realized that actually we did it subconsciously, but it translated very well into clinical practice. And we have had our own share of people actually. I mean, it was very difficult times actually. At any given period of time, almost about 20-30% of the staff, both the faculties and the staff, were down with the COVID. But all of them we managed in the hospital actually. There is not a single, everybody was taken care in the hospital. All the staff were, both the hospitals were completely opened up. The staff were given the first treatment actually, and most of the people used to complain basically because there were not beds actually, that basically because our staff became a priority first actually, then we. So, but I think it is a combined effort of all the people, because at any given period of time we were almost 20-30% short of staff, right from the GDAs to the faculty. So we are working actually, and the people who are working were really pushed to their limits. But nobody complained actually, but it was a very good thing actually. We got very good reviews from the patients.
Yes, you did.
And a lot of philanthropy came in, supported, so we were able to translate that. Industry came in a big way to support actually, that is what translated this actually. So all this made, and obviously the group practice, everybody being on full-time salaried, made a lot of difference to the entire.
So I would, in the interest of time, have to stop now, and I could converse with you forever, GB. But and learn so much, as always. Any conversation with you is very enlightening. But just to give at least one or two people a chance to have some questions with you, is there anything there that we can? Tapti, is there something in the chat box? So while we are still waiting for that, I have a couple of patient, I won't call it, I would say testimonials that I would like to share while I'm on this call with GB. There was a person with a kidney in his thoracic chest and only got to know about it young, 30 odd years old, and only got to know about it because he went for an ultrasound screening as part of a master health checkup. Panic at home, and of course there were many calls that were made, and everybody told them that this was the only place that was possible for him to have surgery in this country at the price that it did happen. And needless to say, the man has his kidney in his abdominal cavity now, and is somebody who thinks that Dr. GV is God. And I can give you many such people who have gone through such experiences. And also to talk about the administration of the place, is that they actually make sure that somebody follows up with them following their discharge, to enable people to understand how things have progressed with them while they were in the hospital. I'm always grateful when I sit outside his waiting room to take people in and hear the news and work with them as they get better. So for me, it's a privilege that I actually have had with both Nageshwar Reddy Garu and Dr. G.V. Rao. Are there any questions that you want to share? Subhajit, anybody?
It's actually indeed, again, thank you so much. Actually, this entire thing, actually, the man behind this, Dr. Nageshwar Reddy, actually, his vision has been something different from all the rest of the people. Actually, he's been driving the whole thing, actually, and the entire team seems to be conquering, doing the things, ultimately transferring what we never realized.
So do you want to give me that? I don't have my phone, so you'll have to give me the question. Read it.
What is your opinion on patient blood management for your cases?
Patient blood management for your cases.
Blood management, I didn't.
Yeah. Maybe the blood bank? Is that what you're looking
actually,
at?
we have very good question. Actually, we have one of the state-of-the-art blood banks here. We make sure that actually we screen healthy donors, but most of the time the blood we take it whenever it is required only from the family members. That has been the policy of AIG Hospital. Suppose if the person does not have a compatible blood donor from his family, we'll make sure that he donates it, is given to the other patient, and the other patient's family donates to this patient. But it's mostly from this. We don't have many professional donors who come and do this in our hospital. Fortunately, we were able to manage this very effectively. But on a lighter note, actually, that what happened was when we were students, actually, literally, I still remember one day when my professor was operating, literally the blood was literally dripping from the table onto the floor and outside the theatre. The previous surgeons were all considered bloody and gutsy, but today, suppose if I consume blood in my theatre, I am incompetent. So the blood surgery has to be as bloodless
as possible
and as distinct as possible. But some specialities do require. I'm not saying that can be done for all surgeries, but the amount of this is come down tremendously.
How do you perceive the future of public-private partnerships?
Yes, actually, this is what is going to take medicine to a next level. I would be very happy to partner with any of the public hospitals, provided we are given that independence to work on the thing, and we can really make. I mean, I'm not saying other way people cannot, but I think the way it is looking, actually, it takes time. So, but if we are given independence, we are in touch with some this thing. Actually, I'm sure we'll do something. But suppose if I'm given the independence, I'm sure I can turn tables and.
So I'm run out of time, and I'd like to sum it up very quickly. I had Dr. GV talk about practices at AIG and also about partnerships at AIG. But I didn't get a lot about the man himself, and that itself is something that he does very effectively. So his style of leadership is being very self-effacive, and I think that came through in the entire conversation that we had this evening. Having said that, AIG has set standards for many medical organizations, hospitals and otherwise, for showing them a way to go. And how will that way transform the way we are looking at the next 5 years of healthcare? I think that will be another conversation by itself. So I'd like to say thank you very much, GV, and it is indeed my proud privilege to have had this conversation this evening. Would like to thank Tapti and Subhajit at CII and IWN, Team Mohan and Robin at your end, and we couldn't have had this, of course, without your time. So grateful, and this is a pause and not a finish. We will come back to work with you as IWN to make you a member and see how we can get the women workforce motivated at AIG, and also I think some other conversation some other time on other aspects. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, and
Good evening.
sincere thanks to the CII and the IWN for this honor that is bestowed. I'm sure if I can do something from my side, I'll be very glad to do this actually. Thank you once again. I'm not sure whether it is going to be of any inspiring thing for anybody, but it is just like more than that actually. I thank you for sharing my views with the CII and IWN. Thank you so much once again.